Some years ago, I got stuck in the city because my transport was late, and I missed the train I was supposed to get on to continue my journey. I got a cheap room at a cheap hotel in a not too shady part of town, and thought to myself that as long as I take my precautions and don't take any stupid chances, nothing ill should happen to me. I'm a petite female, and back then I was about 20 years old, and not too brave either. When arriving at the hotel, I quickly noticed there were some bars on the other side of the street, and further down there was a 24-hour open store. But the street there wasn't very well lit, so I decided that I wasn't going to go over there. I came out to my room and fell asleep pretty quickly. After a few hours, I was awakened by shouting and laughing from the street. The bars were closing, and people were heading in all directions. I looked out the window and noticed a crowd on the street. I was so hungry, I decided I would run down and over to the store quickly to get some food and run back to the hotel room before the street emptied again. When I arrived at the entrance, I had to walk by two guys chatting lively in a language I didn't understand. They were loud and kept looking back into the store. I excused myself and made my way around them. Inside, I got what I was looking for and got in line. There was quite a line built up of drunk people looking for a snack. The girl before me had real trouble paying for her food. She dropped her wallet on the floor, and coins poured out. I quickly bent down to help her gather it, and I noticed how incredibly drunk she was, totally not present at all. The cashier started to get impatient and asked the girl, "Are you having this stuff or what? The total is..." She had trouble counting up her money, so I stepped up and asked if she needed any help. She showed me her hand, and I picked out the money and handed it to the cashier. She then walked away. I paid for my own food and turned around to walk out when I suddenly noticed that the other two guys outside had been joined by a third, and all of them were standing maybe 20 meters from the entrance with a big black van with the engine running. I could see the face of one of them in the dim light, and I swear my blood froze. Till this day, I have never seen such cold predator eyes in my life, and they were staring at the drunk girl who was standing and looking at the magazine cover just beside the sliding front doors. Every time she moved and the doors would open, I saw the man standing there. I had no idea what to do, but was sure as hell not going to let that girl outside alone. So I went over to her and asked her if she was alone, if her friends were out on the street or anything, but no, she didn't have anyone with her. I decided to grab her hand and told her that she had to come with me. She was so drunk at the time that she didn't object, even a little. Just squeezed my hand back, and I didn't wait any longer. We walked out in the street, and I almost fainted of anxiety when I saw the guys following us with their eyes when we walked down the street. I was so scared they were going to follow us or something. It was only maybe 100 meters to the hotel, but it was dark and most of the people who were on there earlier had scattered in all directions. Luckily, one of the bar doors opened and out came a small crowd of people. I didn't wait for anything. I screamed, "Hey, wait up, we're right here, we're coming," as loud as I could, and they stopped and just looked at us while I tried to run with the girl dragging beside me. One of the guys shouted something back, but I didn't catch what it was. Just continued to move forward as fast as we could. I thanked them for waiting and explained what was up. Then the guy shouted at us and told me that he saw a shadow of somebody running away along the brick walls of the buildings on the dark side of the street when he heard my yelling. They walked with us to the hotel, and I took the girl to my room. I was so shaken up that I didn't fall asleep before sometime in the morning. But my new friend fell asleep before she hit the bed. Next morning she wakes up and asked for something to drink. Suddenly she opens her eyes and looks at me like she has no clue what's been going on. I then quickly explained what happened the night before, and that I couldn't leave her alone as I suspected that the guys were up to no good at all. She was shocked to hear this, and didn't remember anything other than going out with her friends. Got some drinks, and then it went black. I walked her to the bus stop, and we had some coffee before she went home. And I caught the train I missed the night before. So creepy guys waiting for a defenseless, out of her mind drunk girl. Let's not meet. When they were busy. So they were busy, and I picked up. Me. Hello? Man. Hey sweetie, are your parents there? Me. Yeah, but they're busy. Man. How old are you? By this point he was breathing rather hard. Me. I'm 9. Man. Well, would it be okay for me to push my penis in your vagina? Wasn't sure what I heard, but I still got a chill down my spine. Me. What? Man, more confidently. Can I put my penis into your vagina? Major chills at this point, so I slammed the phone and am absolutely mortified. My dad is the only one home, and I felt too embarrassed to tell him, even though I was equally scared. Spent the whole time at the skating rink, where the birthday was, scared and thinking the guy who called was going to kidnap me. When I get home, I tell my mom what happened because she could tell I was not feeling okay. She immediately called the cops, and they came over to see what they could do. After some brief sleuthing, it turns out the guy was calling different kids around the area all the way from Pennsylvania, Washington born here, and saying vulgar things to them as well. And honestly, that's the last I heard of him. And of course, as with the theme of this subreddit, let's not ever meet. Let's begin. My best friend Liz and I went to Six Flags in Atlanta for her birthday, along with her sister Marie and their mom Lena. We had a great time. We didn't exactly want to spend all of our money on the expensive food the park had. So at around midnight, we leave the park and look for the nearest McDonald's. You would think a McDonald's in this day and age would be an easy find, but we drove about 30 minutes before we saw a sign for one. McDonald's, 1 mile to the right. We drive to the McDonald's and order. We could already tell we weren't in the best part of town. The McDonald's was not up to date, nor was there anyone there or in the surrounding parking lots. Either way, we were hungry and didn't care. Once we got our food, we pulled up to a spot to distribute the food between us. I will point out here that Lena's window was down, so Lena, Marie, and Liz are arguing about who got what food, and I'm looking out the window. To our left, I see a tweaked out woman and man talking to each other, hurriedly and pointing at our car. My alarms were going off, but I didn't want to make a big deal out of something that could be unimportant. Well, the man takes off and the woman starts coming straight towards our car. I immediately yell to Lena, "She's coming!" And Liz looks up, goes, "Mom, we have to go." Lena's oblivious until Marie also chimes in about it. This woman is about 10 feet from our car. Lena goes, "Oh shit," and starts going in reverse. The woman yells, "I just need some help." And Lena says, "Sorry, I can't help you." We speed out, and I look over. The man and the woman are running across the 4-lane road into the woods. Sure, she totally just wanted some help. We were sure that we were about to get mugged and robbed, but thankfully we didn't. Creepy tweaker and her boyfriend. Let's not meet. Ever again. My freshman year of college, I lived in the oldest, grossest dorm rooms on campus. We were settled right in front of train tracks, and right next to a busy city street. Being 18 and careless, I was never really worried about the area. I figured we were safe enough with our locked gates and entryways. As many older dorms have, our floor had to share one huge bathroom. We had small, dimly lit square shower stalls, covered by a thin plastic curtain. There were 8 shower stalls in total, 4 on each wall facing each other. One late morning, I was taking my shower when I heard rustling coming from a stall across from mine. I wasn't really friends with anyone in the dorm yet, so I didn't say anything. It got really quiet for a few minutes. Then the rustling started again, but nobody had started their shower. I started to rush through my shower thinking there were mice or roaches in the bathroom making those noises. As I'm rinsing my hair, I get a peek through the crack between the shower curtain and the tiled wall, and I see what's been rustling around in the shower caddy corner to mine. I screamed loud enough to be heard throughout the entire floor. There had been a homeless man jerking off on the floor of the shower stall, peeking at me through the edges of the curtain. He ran out of the bathroom and dorm before anyone there could get a hold of him. Police were called, and he was detained, and I never heard much more from them besides they caught him near the train tracks. Needless to say, I didn't live in the ghetto dorm for the entire school year. Second semester, I was out of there, and the following year, the entire building was torn down. Homeless people. Although you looked like you were already on the brink of death, let's not meet again. When I was 16 years old, my dad started telling me about the middle of the night phone calls. The caller would get my dad on the line, ask for me, and when he didn't get me, he would start telling my dad the rudest, most vile things about me. I didn't know who was calling or why, and I never woke up when the phone rang. I wish I could sleep like that now. So I never spoke with the guy. Fast forward, I'm 22, fresh out of the military, and landed at home for a year while I start college. Get a job and save money. This time I hear the phone ring in the middle of the night. Dad mentioned the phone calls tapered off while I was away, for years, but have started again. One day I'm at home and I get a phone call around 12 noon. Some guy, I don't recognize his voice, asks for me, and I say, "Speaking." He proceeds to ask me if I remember doing all sorts of sexual acts, and describes some stuff before I hang up. I am rattled because I always thought if I could hear his voice, I would know who it was. I called the police, who came out to take my statement. This was just a year or so before caller ID became available in my city. They told me how to get the call traced next time, gave me a case number. I moved into my own apartment about a year later, got my name listed in the phone book. Before the internet, this was a big deal. One day, a few months after I moved in, I have a message on my answering machine. "Hello. I think you know who this is." Still. Click. I promptly asked for an unlisted number, and I was one of the first people to get residential caller ID in the city of Seattle. But as far as I know, he never called again. When I was in my early, mid-teens, I would often hang out with my friend Abby at the park. This park had a fairly large forest area with hiking trails. There was a basketball court right at the edge of the forest. One day my friend and I made the poor decision to make crazy noises at the people playing basketball, who were men in their 20s. We expected that they would be confused. We did not expect that they would chase after us with a baseball bat. Abby and I ran off in different directions through the woods as fast as we could. Now, take a moment. Imagine this is a horror movie and the girl is running through the woods being pursued. What do you think would happen next? If you guessed she tripped over a tree root and fell flat on her face, you would be correct. The fact that I just had a real-life horror movie moment was not lost on me. I got up and ran. I didn't even look behind me until I reached a trail with regular people on it. I followed the trail until I met up with Abby. We had both either lost our pursuers or our pursuers gave up. I don't know what would have happened if they had caught up to us, and I don't want to. 20-something guys who chase after 14-year-old girls with a baseball bat are not people I want to meet again. While we probably shouldn't have made silly noises at them from behind trees, they certainly shouldn't have chased us with a baseball bat. No, I don't know how many of them had baseball bats. I definitely saw one being picked up, but wasn't looking closely enough to see if any others were there. This did not happen directly to me, though I was in the home when it happened. The witness to all of this is my older sister, Tori. Around 1999, my sister and her friend Chrissy were 16, and Chrissy had just gotten her license. They had been out joyriding in Chrissy's Ville. We lived in a newer development in a pretty rural area, so there wasn't much else to do for fun. When they got back to our neighborhood, it was already dark. Chrissy lived about half a block away, so she was going to drop Tori off before heading home. The house we lived in had a large patio extended from the front of the house, with trees along either side blocking the view of the driveway. Chrissy stopped the car in front of the driveway, and Tori was about to get out of the car when Chrissy grabbed her arm. Tori looked back and saw a look of fear on Chrissy's face. She turned back toward the house to see what caused this reaction and saw a figure crouched in the shadows between the parked cars. Looking back at them was a man in all black. He wore a black long-sleeved shirt, black pants, and, most frighteningly, a black ski mask. He was also completely barefoot. As he made eye contact with the girls, he raised his finger to his lips as a gesture to shush. Tori slammed the door shut and they raced to Chrissy's house, where her father called the police, and my father. No trace of the man was ever found. What really frightens me about this occurrence is that my parents, myself, and my younger sister were all home at the time. I don't know if the man had any weapons, or if he would have moved along when he realized the house was occupied. But I'm glad my sister came home when she did. And the creepy barefoot shushing man? Let's not meet. This is a story my dad told me not too long ago about my grandpa, and how he came extremely close to being murdered. My grandpa used to be a pastor at a local church, and one night, when he was driving home from a service and was still wearing his robes and collar, he saw a hitchhiker at the side of the road and decided to pull over and pick him up. like he usually would when he saw a hitchhiker. He pulled over and the man got in. The man was wearing overalls and was also carrying an old metal lunchbox with him. My grandpa assumed that he was a construction worker who did not have a ride home after a shift. My grandpa and him started to converse and eventually arrived at the man's destination. The man got out and thanked my grandpa for the ride. A few days later, my grandpa was talking to his neighbor. At one point in the conversation, she brought up a story she had seen on the news about a man who would get rides from people by hitchhiking. Then, when he would reach his destination, he would take a knife out of an old metal lunchbox and kill the person driving. My grandpa almost fainted after hearing this news. He assumed the only reason he was alive and talking to her was because of the robes and collar he was wearing. Now, it was late 1999 when I was 15. I lived about 3 miles from my school, so my mum would pick me up every day. But this time she was running a little bit late, so I went to go and get a drink while I waited. So anyone who lives in Queensland knows how hot summers get when you're just standing around. So I went into the nearest KFC toilets. It was a 60-second walk from my school, so I could take my itchy tights off, and I went to the gas station next door to get a drink. As I walked in, a guy who was walking through the car park walked in the gas station right behind me, and kept following me down every aisle. From what I remember, he was pretty old, and all of his clothes were dirty, so I'm guessing he was either very poor or homeless. I avoided making eye contact. I walked around all of the aisles trying to get rid of him, but I knew he was still walking behind me. So I thought, fuck the drink. I'll go back to the KFC where it was a bit more crowded, so people can do something if anything bad happens. I walk over quickly and got in the back of the queue for food. To my horror, I see him coming through the door. I thought this can't have been a coincidence, and I was right. He comes right behind me and starts talking to me. I ignored him whenever he'd asked me how old I was and where I was from. But then he put his hand around my arm from behind me. So I shouted, "What the fuck you touching me for?" and walked towards the counter. This grabbed a lot of people's attention. A lot of people were looking at me, but honestly, I didn't care. Luckily, a manager was on duty, so I called him over, and he came out and asked what the commotion was. After I told him that he was following me and really bothering me, the manager asked him to leave the establishment, or the cops would be called. And after stuttering and trying to come up with something to say, he just left the restaurant in a rage. All I could think was that it happened to me. I thought that was just something you heard on the news and that it was some sort of rare occurrence, but nope, it can happen to anyone. Random pervert, pedo, potential kidnapper. Let's not meet. 1990s manager of KFC, let's meet again so I can thank you. I didn't get the chance last time. So a couple of weeks ago, I was cuddling in my room with my boyfriend. We were just chilling, watching some videos on YouTube and such. This isn't out of the ordinary, considering that we do this all the time. However, this particular night, I decided to have my window open. I normally never open my window or leave the blinds wide open, in fear of seeing the face of somebody in my backyard, partially due to reading a lot of Let's Not Meet. But I decided that it was time to get over my fear, and that there was no way that there was anyone in my backyard or behind my window. So we were just chilling when all of a sudden my mom comes inside my room and immediately she's like, "You need to close your windows and blinds right now." And she looks hella panicked, and she's hushing her voice like someone would hear her. So I was like, "What do you mean? Is there someone out there?" And she gives me this look that literally brings chills down my spine. And I start to freak out, so my boyfriend goes to close my windows and blinds. I asked my mom what was going on, and this is what my mom told me. I was letting in a friend to pee, and I opened the door from our garage that leads to the side gate to find some guy crouched behind our trash cans. And he just stood up and walked out of our side gate the moment I opened the door. Now let me tell you why this freaks me out. My side gate is connected to my backyard. There's nothing that separates the two. And my window opens directly towards my backyard. So there was this guy crouched behind our trash cans near my window. The entire time my boyfriend and I had the windows open. He literally could have came in at any moment, or could have been watching us for who knows how long. And we don't even know who it was, or why they were there, or how often they come over. So man hiding behind my trash cans, let's not meet. I was 12 years old when my class went on project days. I was very excited about the next few days, but after spending one day there, I got ill. When my classmates left the hotel, I had to stay. After some boring hours, I decided to go out of my room and look around in the hotel. When I was in the lobby, I noticed that nobody was there. Then suddenly some guy came into the lobby. He glanced at me and began to talk to me. He asked me what I was doing there, and I told him that my classmates were gone, and I did not feel well, so I stayed. He looked at me for a few seconds. He seemed very nice. But then he asked me a question that I did not expect. He asked me if I was completely alone, and if I would show him where my room is. I was about to panic, but luckily I stayed calm and said to him that in fact I wasn't alone in my room and that my class would return in a few minutes. Then suddenly some other guy came into the lobby, and the creepy guy I was talking to went out of the lobby without saying anything. After that moment, I went back into my room and waited until my class returned. To be fair, I have to say that I am not completely sure if that guy really wanted to harm me, but I will not forget the face he made when I said that I'm alone. I was living with my boyfriend a few years back. We were living in a suburban area that was slightly sketchy, but never anything as a woman I was too afraid to venture out alone in. Anyways, one night we were both in the apartment watching TV in the living room when a loud banging pounded on the door over and over and over. We were scared shitless, just staring at each other because this was not knocking, it was banging, pounding. We had no peephole in our door, so we sat there frozen, waiting for the aggressive pounding and handle rattling to end. After a while, it stopped. About 30 seconds later, the sliding glass door in the kitchen began to rattle, as though someone was trying to pull it open. Luckily, it had the screen door locked, the glass door itself locked, and a wooden thick stick in the track to prevent it from being opened from the outside. We were so scared but did not make a move. Finally, the banging and jiggling on the kitchen door stopped. We were relieved. We brushed it off and began watching TV again. About a minute and a half later, the pounding on the front door began again, with intense jiggles on the handle. We waited it out in complete fear until we heard pounding on a door in the distance, our neighbor's door. We were so frightened we went to bed, deciding we would start looking for another place. The next day I went to the kitchen, and the screen door was open completely. I know I shut it the previous night because of mosquitoes. We moved soon after another similar thing happened, while I was in the home alone later. Never figured out who or what that was. I'm a 17-year-old girl, and I live in a rural area. My house is almost entirely visible from the road. I'm typing this almost exactly 30 minutes after it happened, and I'm still shaking. At 5 a.m., 30 minutes ago, I was sleeping deeply and someone slowly opened my bedroom window. My bed is literally right next to the window, so I can open and close it. I was sleeping, and I could hear my window slowly opening upwards. It's old and heavy, and I thought I was dreaming. Or it was a possum because they live on the tree outside it. It's 5 a.m. and it's getting light at about this time. My bedroom is isolated and at the back of the house, but there is a complete driveway and full access to it there. And holy shit, I realize it's a person opening the window. I look through my makeshift curtain and I say, "What the fuck?" And there's a figure outside my window and they slam it down quickly when they realize there's a person less than a meter from them, right next to my face. I could see the figure because there was still some light, but nothing else. I start yelling. I go to my parents, etc. They check the area, but they can't see any cars or people, as it's covered in trees. They're stressed. All in the meanwhile, I think I'm crazy. How could that have happened? Was I dreaming? But my curtain is tucked under the window. My cat is going crazy, and I know it happened. It was terrifying. I'm sure that they were a thief. We've had some dodgy people around my area before, but I swear, when it happened, I thought it was a ghost or something. I was terrified because I've been reading a lot of this up and no sleep. And now I have to get ready for school. My parents are going to put a lock on my window. Edit. I don't understand why someone would try to rob a house at 5 a.m. My dad's awake every morning before 5. And there's still light in the sky. If it was earlier in the night, it probably would have been way scarier. Edit 2. A policewoman came. She explained about crimes in the area. She looked for footprints and fingerprints, but couldn't really see any. And it was raining. She was really kind, but I'm still spooked. Edit 3. I don't know if anyone will read this, but a few hours later my parents discovered the window adjacent to mine had chisel marks on it and was fairly damaged. Obviously this means they tried to break in through there, but couldn't, and then tried my window. My husband works nights sometimes. His shifts rotate, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 p.m. to 9 a.m., that sort of thing. I wasn't too bothered by it until the other night. We live in a fourplex, 1 beside and 2 behind, all on a single level. Since I'm not working yet, I'm pretty familiar with the comings and goings of my neighbors. Heck, I even know what everyone's cars sound like. It was probably just after midnight, and I was talking to some friends over Skype, when I heard the door handle jiggle. At first, I I thought maybe my husband had come home early and got up to greet him. Then quickly realized I hadn't heard his work boots on the gravel or his car. I went really still and kept listening, just in case I was mistaken. Finally I yelled, "Hello?" Just silence. Then I heard something in the back. My husband likes me to be protected, so he bought us a couple of guns. I grabbed the shotgun and pumped it once. It's loud enough without actually putting ammo in it that you know what it is. Then I yelled, "I have a gun, and I know how to use it. Get lost before I call the police." Big, heavy footsteps ran off across our gravel plot, and I stayed up the remainder of the night until the sun came up. Then I finally fell asleep. My husband came home later that morning and was worried when he found me in bed at 11 a.m, but let me sleep a little longer once I explained what happened. The next day, he had off, so we went to visit some friends of his. When we got back, we discovered the pumpkins I had next to the stoop were all knocked over, like someone was looking for a key. Husband did a quick sweep of the house before we went in, but we're looking for a new place now. So, person trying to break into our place, let's not meet. So I just got back from the store and I gotta share this experience I just had with you guys. It may not be as scary as some of the other encounters posted on this subreddit, but it still gives me the chills. Let me start off by saying that this morning I wasn't in the best of moods. I had to work the graveyard shift last night, and I woke up after only 4 hours of sleep with my back killing me. I couldn't get back to sleep, so I decided that I would go run a few errands since I was now wide awake. I needed to get a new haircut while I was out as well. My sister works at a salon that is right next to a Target, so after I got my sister to mow my scalp, for free by the way, I popped over to Target, intending to grab a few things before heading home. So, I was pushing my cart down the frozen food section, and I turned the corner to go into the next aisle. When I did, there was a middle-aged lady that was pushing her cart, heading in the opposite direction. I nearly bumped into her, but stopped before our cars collided. She gave me a mean look and said in a really bitchy tone, "Excuse me." Now, again, I have to say I wasn't in the best of moods, and I'm a short-tempered person as it is. So without thinking, I shot back at her and said, "Shut up, you're fine. Call me an asshole if you want. No one's perfect." But what happened next was just pure insanity. The lady then suddenly left her shopping cart and started to follow me. I noticed this was about halfway down the aisle, and I turned around to ask her what her problem was, and then, I shit you not, she rolled her eyes back into her head, pointed at me and screamed very loudly. When I say screamed, I mean she was shrieking at the top of her lungs. It was like something out of The Exorcist. I hurried down the aisle to get away from this insane person, but she started running after me, still pointing at me. Needless to say, all the bystanders immediately stopped what they were doing and stared at us. The lady kept screaming like a banshee at the top of her lungs while she chased me around the store. Well, I noped the fuck out of there. Didn't feel like explaining the situation to an employee, and I couldn't stand hearing that ear-piercing screaming any second longer. I ran out of the exit of the store. I looked back into the store as I headed for my car. The lady was standing just outside the now open automated sliding doors, but she was still inside the store, if that makes sense. While she stood there, her mouth was just hanging wide open, and she was still pointing at me, and her eyes were still rolled back into her head. All you could see was the whites of her eyes. She suddenly turned around and briskly walked back into the store. I decided to pick up my stuff at Walmart just down the street instead. All I could think the entire drive home was, what the fuck was that? Creepy, screaming, possessed banshee lady. Perhaps I shouldn't have been so rude to you, but you still have more than one screw loose in your noggin. Let's not meet again. So here's a bit of backstory first. I live in a neighborhood with lots of abandoned houses. There are about 12 houses in my neighborhood, and over 7 of them are abandoned. In one of the abandoned houses there is a playground in the backyard that the old neighbors left behind. Now I was 12 at the time, and I knew in my brain I was a little too old to be playing on a playground made for 6-year-olds. But I can't resist a nice swing set. I would spend some of my extra time over there, as it was summer, and I usually just played video games. The house is past some woods you have to walk through, about a block away from my house. It was a normal day, and my mother said I should get some fresh air outside, and that she was tired of watching me play video games. I thought it was the perfect opportunity to go swing on the swing set. It was beautiful outside. The not too hot heat, but the warm with a slight wind. I got on my shoes and walked down the street. As I was about maybe a few steps in, I heard a branch snap. Now I hear these all the time from squirrels, so I don't think anything of it. I finally finished walking through the forest and reached the house. I open the back fence, lock it, and start to swing. I swing for maybe about 2 minutes when I hear breathing. Now I stop for a moment, trying to think where the hell it's coming from. After about 30 seconds of stopping, I forced myself to think it was just me, as I was going pretty high. I continued to swing for another 5 minutes, and decided that I was done for now. As soon as I sit up, I hear a, "Hey." I look around for a moment and notice a man, about mid-30s, early 40s. Dirty, gross black hair that's all over the place, a stained-up sweatshirt, and underwear with the back cut out so I can see the outline of his butt. This guy was obviously homeless and had a crazy look in his eyes. Here I am, a 5'2", 95-pound kid with no strength, staring at a 6'2", 170-pound man. I, as tough as I could, said, "What's up?" The guy stared at me and started to smile. After 15 seconds, which seemed like 40 minutes, he said, "Have you room for one more?" I quickly said, "I was actually leaving, but it's all yours." The man opened up the gate, walked past me, sat down, and started to swing. I speed walked to the gate, shut it, and started walking in the forest. About 20 seconds later, I hear a loud, "Get the fuck back here!" and hear the gate spin open and running not far behind me. I practically shit my pants and started running as fast as I could. I somehow made it back to my house and locked the door without the man noticing where I went. I told my mom, practically in tears, and she called the police. The police searched around and came back a couple of hours later with no one. That night I was tossing and turning in my bed when I heard footsteps in my street. I look out my window and see the man looking through the windows of all the houses on my street. I start to shake as I grab the phone and call the police without even telling my parents. The cops showed up a few minutes later and caught the man. The cops didn't give us a whole lot of information, but a few days later, cops called and told us the man had a mental illness and has been living in one of the abandoned houses for a couple of weeks, and that he was planning on kidnapping me and doing God knows what to me. So, to the creepy fuck that tried to kidnap me, let's not meet. I just remembered this encounter back when I started second grade. To better give you an idea of why this is weird, I used to play Dungeons and Dragons when I was a kid. It was a big deal back in 2002 to 2003-04 in my school, so I got into it. It's a board game, but it's very complex. Each character you use has its own sheet and whatnot, so there were some precise rules to follow to get the most enjoyment out of the game. Now, as I mentioned, this happened when I started my second grade. A boy transferred from one of the classes by the name of Bogdan. He was a huge but chubby, wide-eyed, almost intimidating, but also very dweeby-looking boy. He is weird to describe. Apparently he was autistic, and some kids used to make fun of him, which was horrible. Now, my class was one of the more disciplined ones at my school, and we kinda accepted Bogdan quickly. And we used to hang out with him a lot, even if he was acting weird a lot. As a kid, I never fully grasped the concept of autism, so I found him sometimes annoying. Now, I played a game by the name of Baldur's Gate 2, which was a Dungeons and Dragons video game. Everybody used to talk about it at my school. It came out in 2000, but since my country used to get games much later back then, we kinda were talking about it in 2002. Now, Bogdan came from a rich family. His father was a popular lawyer, while his mom was involved in politics, so his parents were never really home all that much. Once my English teacher paired me up with Bogdan for a project to make up a short fictional storyline. I was a big Dungeons and Dragons fan, and so was he, so we decided to create a high fantasy storyline, even though we ripped 90% of Baldur's Gate story with our own bizarre childlike imagination. Once I was invited to his house to finalize on the project and present it to our teacher, I went over to his house. And this is where the bizarre stuff happened. On the outside, the house was huge and beautiful with 2 modern cars. I go inside, and I see the house is kinda messy, and a lot of mirrors and vases are broken. Or it looks like they're in places that you normally would never see a vase. Like inside a bathroom or something. Which even as a kid, it caught me off guard. I saw the TV they had on the opposite side facing the wall. It was pretty weird. I asked Bogdan what's going on, and he acts like nothing's wrong, and keeps repeating like a loop, word by word. Then, as we are both writing the end of our project, he starts quoting some of the lines of the characters from the Baldur's Gate video game. The one he quotes the most is where your main character, depending on your gender, race, and voice, moves to a different location, and he says in a Cockney-like accent, "Alright, what's this then?" He insists on me putting that line in there for unknown reasons. I tell him it wouldn't make sense to put it in there, and he repeats that fucking line again. I told him that I will finish the project back at my home, because he annoyed the hell out of me, so I left, and he acted normally about my leaving like nothing's wrong. I present my project the next day with Bogdan, and he out of nowhere starts verbally abusing me about changing the storyline, even though I didn't change anything, and that what we wrote in it was approved by him. He starts calling me these vile names for a kid at that time I wasn't supposed to say. The teacher gets angry, and we get an F. Now, I was a bookwormy type of kid, and this was the first time I got an F since I was mostly A's and B's during first grade. I get angry and I push Bogdan violently on the floor, and he starts crying. The teacher flips out and tells me I will stay in detention after the class. They call my mom and dad, and my mom comes and scolds me for pushing Bogdan. She understood why I did that, but I shouldn't have done it in the first place. The next day, his father calls at my house and apologizes on behalf of his son, and tells him that me and Bogdan should make up first thing in the morning. The next morning, his dad and my mom meet face to face for the first time, and we all say sorry to each other. But I noticed that Bogdan says sorry in a menacing way, almost like he planned to do something. I told my mom about it, and she told me that I was paranoid and to let go. A couple of days pass, and me and Bogdan don't exchange a single word, until he tells me something cryptically from the Baldur's Gate game. Almost like a reference or something, he tells me, "Make way, villainy, hero coming through," which one of the characters by the name Minsk tells it in the game, and it's like an iconic line, I think. I thought he was just being Bogdan, till one day he wasn't at school. I come home from school, and I find one of my windows slightly broken, and the doorknob of my house's front door on the floor. Now, I was really bad financially with my family at that point, and we had this old-ass store that you don't need a lot to get through. And for the past couple of weeks, we found that the doorknob was kinda not working all that well. Also, I lived in a barrack-like house, and not a proper one, very old and cheap. I found a couple of my Dungeons & Dragons board games missing, and a couple of mirrors broken in my house. And for some reason, the mayo was missing from my fridge. I instantly called my parents, and they both came quickly and called the police. The police came, asked my parents a couple of questions, and my sis, who came late that day. They told us that they will find out what they can ASAP, and will inform us. But I had a feeling it was Bogdan. The board games missing, and the mirrors, it was obvious. His father was contacted by the police, and they informed him that his son broke and entered into my house, the barrack. His father and his mother were shocked to find out, and this was reported on the news, since both of his parents were more or less famous people in my country. After that, both of his parents returned everything their son stole, and after a couple of weeks, Bogdan never returned to class, and probably switched schools. Many years later, when I started high school, back in 2009, I found out that both of his parents divorced, and his father moved to another country. I'm a male, 21 years old at the time this happened, was living in a modern city in Europe, Spain, but rather poor myself, unfortunately. I lived with my father during my teens, but he was violent and threw me out on the streets in the middle of a school year semester. That led me to drop out and work for a living. One thing led to another, and my life was pretty much worthless after a short time. No education, no job, and no money. 3 years later, I'm living on my mom's couch in a small city apartment, shady neighborhood with the baggage that comes with it. Life was rather miserable. I have to say my memory does fail on some parts due to the zombie-like state I was in. So I leave out anything I can't remember clearly for your sake. What I won't forget is a girl I had a crush on right after I moved in at my mom's, that crossed my path again around 2 years later. The warmth and happiness I felt when she hugged me after several years was exactly what I needed at the time. Well, that's what I thought at least. Teresa was a petite blonde, blue eyes, and a smile that made anyone that met her infatuated. And now she wanted me. Why she wanted me didn't actually raise any questions in my head. I was clearly not thinking straight. I was at work one day when I received the text. "I cannot meet you anymore. He knows and he is crazy. Please leave and never come back. He's going to kidnap you or hurt you badly," he said. It hit me straight in the face. I could feel my blood pump through my veins. I got nauseous and dizzy. Having anxiety does not make a bad situation better. I need to say this. I did know her ex was a madman from before. He was in jail the first time we dated, but she said it was over when we met. I wouldn't have done anything with her if I knew. He was in jail for violence because of jealousy, and now he was after me. All kinds of things ran through my head, and I realized she probably used me to make him jealous. She revealed he saw our texts, and that's how he learned. I was not aware that they were together still. How stupid I was for not seeing that is hard to think about now. The fear I felt every second of the day after this moment was crippling. In our following messages, I learned that he was looking for me. He and his brothers that were equally crazy. I know some might think it couldn't be that bad, but it was. I went straight home from work right after getting the message. I told my boss I was sick, which actually was true due to my anxiety. I don't think I slept anything that night. I was numb and my mind was cloudy. Due to previous experiences, I was seeing a psychologist for possible PTSD at the time. Luckily, Spain has free healthcare. I went back to work the day after and got called into my boss's office. I thought he would fire me, but that was not the case. He said that someone came in looking for me after I left the day before, and he basically had to throw him out of the store because he wouldn't leave before he found me. I learned that it was his brother that lived close by that came for a visit. My boss tried to convince me he had several favors he could call in to take care of these guys that were after me. But I felt it would make things worse, so I quit right then and there. I started to isolate myself. He knew where I lived because acquaintances I met in the streets warned me. People are looking for me, and they have been seen around my neighborhood. Apparently they are driving around searching for me, thinking they eventually had to see me one day. What they would do to me if they found me is something that ran through my head all the time. I packed my stuff together, and a friend let me stay at his house. I didn't want to risk my mother to get involved in this, so it was the best thing to do at the time. I got more isolated and paranoid. I didn't leave my friend's home unless I had to. I already changed numbers, and only gave it to people I trusted. Later on, a common friend called me, somehow, got my number, and asked to meet up. Rather unusual since we didn't usually talk, and never hung out, just the two of us. He was friends with her, Teresa. I realized he actually didn't know that I knew what was going on. He tried to get me to meet him. He had some lame excuse, and I understood it was a setup. He tried to convince me, and when he finally gave up, started becoming hostile. I said I didn't feel well, and that's why I couldn't go out for a beer. He finally hung up. This is already months later, so this wasn't going to get better anytime soon. One night, after a long evening playing video games with my friend, I was woken up by someone calling me from an unknown number. My name is Alphonse. You should be very careful when you walk outside. Remember my name." Then he hung up. Again, I started shaking. Who is this? And why is this guy threatening me? I could not think of anyone else that would want to harm me, but I did not recognize the name. I woke my friend up, and he said that he knows who it is, but no more than that. He said he didn't know, but I could tell he did. I couldn't sleep anymore. All the events had made me into a scared little kid, and I did not know what to do. After doing some more research on this Alphonse guy, I found that he was a guy you would pay if you wanted him to take care of something for you, like collecting money or making people disappear. I was thinking that my life is over. I had nowhere to turn, unless I was able to move. Since I didn't own anything or have any money, I had to find someone willing to help. I reached out to anyone I could think of that I knew lived far away, and hit the jackpot. A distant cousin could offer me a carpenter job at minimum wage on the other side of the country. I just went with it, seeing I had no other choice. I asked them to wire me some money for the plane trip, and to pay them back after I got my first salary. I was finally free, and could start living again. That's how I'm still alive today. That I'm sure of. After moving, I experienced similar incidents, but that's for a whole nother story. I didn't learn my lesson the first time, but I guess that's how it is when you feel alone in the world. You take what you get, more or less. If anyone wonders, I'm a healthy and productive member of society now, living happily with a great girlfriend and nice job on the other side of the world. So dear Alphonse, or crazy ex-boyfriend, let's not ever meet. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 101. Thank you so much for all the good feedback you gave me on yesterday's 100th episode. Not sure what I'm going to do for episode 200, but that should be a while away, thankfully. I'll do what, on average 3 of these a week? Yeah, that's months away before I need to worry, but that's probably next year actually when I think about it. So, very big thanks to everyone for all your comments, for all your likes, for all your shares and retweets. It's just very, very helpful to me. I appreciate all that. Okay, let's see. Updates for the week. Okay. I think, yeah, I should have enough to do another subscriber stories video on Tuesday. Wednesday will again be 3 True Scary Stories. Thursday, I'm not certain of yet. I'm thinking, you know what, I'm going to make an effort to try and get that Tinder video finally finished. So hopefully that. If not, then it'll be something. You know, I generally have something interesting, or at least I hope it turns out to be interesting. Then that brings us to Friday, and yep, Friday's already taken care of actually. Friday will be paranormal stories again. And on Saturday, not really sure. Let's all cross our fingers and hope I can get another TIFU done. I think I've got 1 to start with. Just 4 more to go. And I've got almost a week to get that, so that should be fine. And with that said, I'm gonna go have a snack and get some rest, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.